It's the most magical time of the year, and I'm not talking about Christmas. I'm talking about the NFL season. So make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. Get the most live NFL games all in one place. Right now, you can save $85 when you bundle NFL Sunday Ticket with YouTube TV. Sign up today at youtubetv.com/Spotify. Device and content restrictions apply. Discount applied to first 4 months of YouTube TV, then $72.99 a month. Ends August 29th. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. No refunds.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in the film study. And for the first time in months, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL, and I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Johnny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Was this the first time in about 8 months that the intro works? Is this the first time on the Eagles Pinball Network, in fact, where the intro actually works? Yeah, it's always strange preseason, isn't it? So I was fully away. So full disclosure, I've been away for the past 5 days. So I did not watch the Eagles preseason game in depth on holiday. I think there's only so much my wife can take. I think if I wake up in the morning and spend 4 or 5 hours grinding the All-22 of a terrible preseason game. So I did not. So I watched it all yesterday. And I forgot how much of a grind actually it is. So I spent hours watching it yesterday. Then today I've just finished writing up the reports. Now I did a podcast on it. I've probably watched too much preseason Eagles film already. But I guess if you've put in all the work and watched the film, you may as well come and talk about it. So yeah, how was your experience, Shane, of watching Eagles football live again? Did it feel back, or did it feel boring after a couple of plays when you remember it is just in fact preseason?
I mean, it's always tough to watch Kenny Pickett play football. So that's rough. And obviously, you know, the offense, it was you get to a point in the second half where you're like, all right, let's have one of those 17 play drives that burns 14 minutes off the clock and let's get this thing over with. But it's fun to have football to watch. I really enjoy watching preseason to look at some of the younger guys that I've watched things, you know, the last couple of years for the draft for. So I tend to watch it through that lens more than really rooting and hoping the Eagles win. So I'm really ready to get to the preseason, but it was nice to watch some film. And I think there's some things that, you know, we can pick up along the way. And so that's what we're going to do today. For those of you that are maybe new to the show, each week Johnny and I will bring you a show. Typically it's going to be on Wednesdays in the season to give us that extra day to watch the film from a Sunday. But given this game was on a Friday, we had a little extra time. And typically we will show clips on the screen if you're watching live on YouTube. We tweet our clips as well if you're listening on an audio platform and you want to go back and watch the clips later or follow along as you listen. We try to talk about the plays in a way that you don't have to be watching, but it's always sort of best if you can see the clips as well. And we typically go through and we each pick 3 points on offense, 3 things that stood out to us on defense, and we go from there. And we typically don't discuss these points beforehand, so other than to order them, 5 minutes before the show starts. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to dive in. Johnny, do you want to do offense or defense first?
I think I was actually going to just mention this actually before you began. So yeah, also those of you listening for the first time to a film episode, we basically tried a few things last year and we fell on the 3 things because otherwise we just discussed everything. So it's not possible in one podcast to break down an entire game of football. So if you do want to see like everything, like there's loads of stuff out there obviously online. Me and Shane tweet a lot of different clips as well. I obviously write for Bleeding Green where I do more of like a full summary. This is more of like an intense look at, let's say, major talking points. Let's start with offense because I think it may be the most boring of the 2 sides this week, and sometimes we'll mix it up. I was going to mention this, Shane. Zach Berman on Twitter or X just tweeted that about the practice for the Patriots today. He said, "This is the most Kellen Moore-ish day of the summer for the Eagles. Different packages, more motion, adjustments at the line. And it is such a difference to what the preseason film was like. If today's training camp apparently feels like the most Kellen Moore-ish day, preseason felt like the least Kellen Moore-ish day. It felt like about as vanilla of an offensive scheme as you can see. So, full disclosure, we talk probably a combination on this show of scheme and players. For the offense in particular, this week's all about individuals because there is basically no point talking about any sort of schematic takeaways from Kellen Moore's week one because in all honesty, I don't really think that preseason game is going to resemble really anything that Kellen Moore's offense is actually going to really look like in the regular season. So I think it's fair just to put out there that there's not much schematically you can read into the offense, so we'll probably focus on individuals. Do you think that's pretty fair to say, Shane?
Yeah, absolutely. Offenses aren't going to tip a lot of things in the preseason, and nor are defenses for that matter. I also just do want to mention, Jonny said that we can't talk about everything in the game, and we can't even watch everything. Like, to watch one play and identify what's going on with everybody on the field, we would never get through the film, but we do surrender a bit of creative control to this podcast to our Patreons to choose a player spotlight. So if you're interested in that, if there's a specific player that you want to see us focus on, you can join the Patreon community at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. Join the Discord, and we'll put up polls each week on the player that you guys want us to really key in on. So that's something that we'll be doing as we get along into the preseason. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop in here. I'll take us off the top here with my number one takeaway, which is talking about Will Shipley and pass protection. One of the biggest things that we've mentioned on this show that we were concerned about when it comes to Will Shipley was his ability to pass protect. He was a solid runner. He doesn't have breakaway speed, whatever. But there were two issues, and I think Jonny's going to talk about one of them with ball security and ability to pass protect. And the most encouraging thing I saw from Shipley, I know he catches the touchdown, whatever, but was his ability as a pass protector, because that's something that he reportedly struggled with in training camp. I've got two clips here that I'll show. The first one, it's Shipley offset to the left of Kenny Pickett, and he's going to pick up the blitzing linebacker coming through the right B gap. So that's the gap between the guard and the tackle. And I'll just roll the clip here, but the blitz comes, and he's able to come over, and he collisions the linebacker, and he gives some ground, but he stands him up, gives time for the ball to get out. And so, again, you can see it from the back view. It's number 51 here is going to come between the right guard and the tackle. And that's a pretty solid pass protection rep, especially for a guy that we didn't think had a lot of those. A lot of that at his disposal in college. The other clip I want to show, this one's just kind of a disaster for the offense as a whole, but I think Shipley does a good job. I'll just roll the clip, and then I'll talk about it from the back view. But the Ravens get the Eagles with a pressure. Guy comes through unblocked, and I'm not talking about protection issues here, but if I were, the Eagles slide the wrong way. They slide to the right side, and they end up with three guys on the slide blocking one pass rusher, and that leaves the left guard, the left tackle, and Will Shipley to block four guys off the other edge. And so this is a mistake up front. It's a mistake by Kenny Pickett to not know that he's got to be hot. If both of these guys come, the ball should come out. Granted, no receivers looking for it to begin with, but Shipley identifies the most dangerous guy, which is the inside guy, linebacker number 51, and he steps up and he gets him to the ground. Now, obviously, there's two, and so Pickett still takes the sack, but I thought that was a good rep by Shipley as well, even if it was a terrible rep from the offense as a whole. So seeing him able to pass protect, if Shipley's going to get on the field, he's got to be able to do that. So that was nice to see him check that box.
Yeah, this is my first point as well. So I'm going to go straight to my first one, which was also on Will Shipley. And as Shane mentioned, we don't really talk about this a lot before. Sometimes we sort of tailor the points. So the reason why I wanted to focus on Will Shipley was because sort of reading the comments after the game. So I didn't watch it live, obviously, being away and time differences. So I sort of read before I watched. I actually haven't watched this game from the broadcast. I've only watched the All-22. I haven't watched the highlights. I've literally only started this game, which is unusual. Normally I watch it live and then sort of go back and rewatch it. There was just a lot of comments about Will Shipley. People seem to be very positive about him, and I try not to be biased in towards my draft takes, but most of you know I thought Shipley was just a guy, and I was quite excited to go and watch him and think, oh, maybe he showed more. And I didn't really see a lot, in all honesty. And I was a little bit surprised by some of the comments online. But I think the reason why was, I don't know if this is a really niche take. I sort of don't often have that many niche takes, but this feels like a very strange one. I don't know if anyone noticed this, Shane, but he seemed to be holding onto the ball for dear life in this game. And you mentioned pass protection being a problem. Ball security has also been a problem for Will Shipley. And I think he clearly understands, which is good, and the coaches have got it through to him, that you can't fumble as a running back 2 or 3. Like if Saquon Barkley fumbles occasionally, at the end of the day, you say the good outweighs the bad to an extent, and you say, well, you're a special talent, so we forgive you. If you're just an average running back or backup, you cannot put the ball on the ground. Well, that's the easiest way to end up not taking reps. And on my film thread that I've tweeted, the play I wanted to look at, Shane, a bit of a weird one, was play 3. There's a reason I wanted to mention this as well, because I wanted your opinion on this one as well. So the Eagles are pulling, I believe it's the center, if you run it from the backside, either the center or the guard pulls, and there is like the world's biggest hole. This looks like the Eagles offense from last year. Where whenever they get a 4-man front or an even front, the Eagles' inside zone run game just seems to kill teams when they're allowed to pull the center. Sadly, it's not Jason Kelce anymore, and 64 completely misses. But there's a really big hole inside, and I wondered your opinion actually on this play. So to me, I sort of wish Shipley had seen the cutback lane a little bit earlier and gone straight for the linebacker, because he would have been one-on-one in the hole. But the other thing I found quite weird was that he doesn't actually try to make a miss at all. As a running back, you sort of see your eyes might light up when you see somebody one-on-one. And I think the reason why, and it's harder to see from this angle, but there was other clips that I watched that I didn't tweet out, that he's just dramatically, like almost like overemphasizing how much he's holding the ball. And I think that takes away sort of any creativity. So I just found it quite interesting. It's a very niche take from me. It's not a major point, but I guess maybe it stresses that this coaching staff are going to really stress the fundamentals and maybe be a little bit safety first in terms of ball handling and stuff like that, because that has clearly been drilled into him, because he did not run like that in college. Did you happen to notice that watching film, and did you happen to sort of have any thoughts on that play as well? Am I being harsh on Shipley, or do you think he could have in general, I guess, given you a little bit more as a rusher?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see a little more from him there. I do think it's hard when you're going to pull the center like that. You're probably expecting the center to make contact with someone. You're probably not immediately looking to cut back to the hole created by the center pulling out. So watching the play as a whole and then seeing that and being like, yeah, I wish he would have cut that back. I'm not sure that I would expect him to make that in real time. But yeah, he didn't really look slippery as a runner. He kind of looked like he got what he was going to get, and that was it. And granted, that wasn't much with the offensive line he was running behind. He had another play where I thought he did a good job of sort of setting up the hole that I tweeted out. And, I liked what I saw from him. I think a lot of like the overpraise of Shipley comes from the fact that people really don't like Kenny Gainwell and want Shipley to win the job. And then, he catches a touchdown pass. So you score a touchdown, people just assume, you did really well. And I mean, he couldn't have been more wide open on that play. So I thought he was fine all the way around and just really checked that box as a pass rusher for me. But you're right. He didn't do anything spectacular as a runner.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a really good point at the start of the podcast as well, Shane. You said that we can only watch so many people in depth. And I think any film guys that pretend to have a great awareness of every single player is just lying to you. Like, it takes forever to watch film properly, like if you really want to dive deep into it. So with that in mind, I'll get to my second point as well. I didn't actually watch every offensive lineman in depth because I do have other things to do in the world, and it's very tough to watch every single player. But I did watch two very, very carefully. And there's been quite a little bit of talk about one of them in particular. So I watched both guards very carefully in terms of Tyler Steen and Trevor Keegan. Keegan I watched selfishly because, as I mentioned on this podcast a lot, nothing's better than being right and sounding smart. And I like Trevor Keegan pre-draft. So I've got to throw out there and make sure that I proved myself to be correct. I am, of course, kidding. But I do watch him because I think that Keegan, actually, his film was really good. And his film looked like his film in college, Shane. Like, he looked solid. He's a good athlete. He doesn't really have any obvious weaknesses, and I was really surprised he fell where he did. He played really well, and I feel really good about the Eagles' backups at the guard position. I didn't take particularly clips of him because there was nothing fancy about what he did. He was just fine. But I did watch him quite closely, and I think there was a PFF tweet going around about how I don't think he gave up any pressures. I think he had a good run blocking grade, and it doesn't surprise me at all. The one that I wanted to get to is the one who appears to have lost a job. based on the reps that he took as a starter and the fact that Mekhi Becton started and didn't play much, it does seem like, from what you read, that Tyler Steen is going to end up not starting at right guard. And I think, unfortunately for him, that injury might have been the worst thing that could have happened to him, because, as we know, injuries in training camp can essentially lose you jobs. But I thought Tyler Steen looked good. And I think easy to remember that Steen didn't play guard for a long time in college. I mean, he was a tackle coming out of college, and some people still saw him as a backup tackle. But I think you can tell that, as always, the Eagles are very, very well coached, because Steen just looks very, very good, basically. And he's playing against Ravens backups. There was a couple of clips that I liked quite a lot. Clip 6 is probably my favorite one. I'm not going to spend too long on the podcast talking about Tyler Steen. It's a backup guard. But I think a lot of people are worried about the Eagles' depth a little bit. So it's nice to see that the Eagles, basically, to me, look like they've got two pretty serviceable backup guards. So Steen is pulling here. And we talk about, like, hitting with a little bit of pop as he hits a linebacker. Like, he really jolts him back. It's quite an unusual block, actually, because you don't often see guys sort of, like, bounce off players. But I always think Steen moves well. And I think if he moves well and adds that sort of power to his frame, I'm a little surprised, if I'm completely honest, that he sort of seems to be out of the job already, because I haven't really seen enough from Becton, but I'd always trust Outland. And I think Becton, basically, in the run game, is going to be an absolute freak. But I do think if things don't work with Becton, and it seems like there might be an issue, I don't feel worried about going back to Tyler Steen at all. And in fact, I think you could argue that the Eagles have two pretty serviceable ready players now to basically start on the offensive line. And that's not including Matt Hennessy possibly at center as well, although we haven't heard as much from him overall in training camp. But I think overall, I wanted to mention those two because I think offensive line depth was a slight concern. And everyone is worried about their offensive line depth because there's not 10 great offensive linemen on any roster. But I think in Tyler Steen and Trevor Keegan, you've got two pretty good backup guards. And I think if they have to play right guard or left guard in Keegan's case, I'm a little bit less worried than I was before preseason. So I'll add that as my second point for this week.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I saw more out of Keegan than I expected. And I thought Tyler Steen looked good. And you got to remember, again, like you mentioned, he was a tackle at Alabama. He wasn't pulling a lot. And I thought they used him a lot as a puller. I actually tweeted that same clip of him pulling through and hitting the linebacker. And I had somebody telling me that wasn't a very good rep for Steen because he gets pushed back into the rush lane. And
yeah, I think we've got someone here in the chat as well actually saying something similar. And to be fair, he's not entirely wrong. It's not really how I would want to. And yeah, I mean, I don't actually know the size of a linebacker, but either way, I think he's right. It's not really what you'd want to see Steen do every time. And to be honest, that was one clip on my thread. I've got a few of Steen. And as always, we try and use film to like back up what we think from the whole game. But it's more just the very fact when you look at players, and we'll talk about John Ross later, and I'll talk about what I mean by this, but just sort of how they look. Like, to me, he looks natural pulling. Like, sometimes you see guards, they're uncoordinated, they're a little bit like clunky. Steen in his movement looks pretty good when he pulls. And the reason why I referenced that play in particular was because I think sometimes strength has been an issue with him. I haven't seen a lot of pop out of him. And that is not how you would want to block. Like, very rarely do you sort of shovel a linebacker back. On that particular play, it didn't work brilliantly because he does almost move into the back. It was more just looking at the way that Steen moved in general in the game. I felt pretty good with him. But yeah, that rep is a fair point to comment. Whoever mentioned that to you on Twitter as well, same as Alex's chiming in the live chat here. I do agree. It is a slightly weird rep, and I did sort of reference that as breaking it down. But I think in general, he looks fine when he has to pull. There's also another clip I've got, but I won't pull up now because I was a bit all day talking about Tyler Steen, where he handled a stunt very well. And just in general, I thought he had a couple of inside zone reps where he looked very good as well. So I think just in general, he looked good, basically.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go on to my second point, which is something that I noticed watching it live, and I went back and looked at it again, but the Eagles ran a couple of really, really slow mesh point RPOs. And so if you watch a lot of college football, the college rules are different than the NFL rules when it comes to RPOs. I think in college, it's either 2 or 3 yards that you get past the line of scrimmage before it's an illegal man downfield. I can't remember for sure. In the NFL, it's only 1 yard. And so, if the line of scrimmage is right here at the 32, you can't have anybody past the 31-yard line unengaged as a blocker before the ball comes out, or it's an ineligible man downfield. And we've seen the Eagles get called for these multiple times over the last year or two. And so when I saw how slow moving the mesh was on these, I knew it was something I was going to have to come back to and watch because, I mean, we just roll the clip here and watch how long Kenny Pickett holds this ball before he throws it. It's extremely slow. And there may be an element of his ball handling is just slow, and Jalen Hurts is faster. And I'm sure that's at play. But more so in the second clip, I'll show you why I think part of it's by design. But on this one, I thought it was a tremendous job by Stoutland and the offensive staff with the offensive line here to allow that extra time. Because if you watch what happens, the center is the only guy that's moving forward on this play, and he pulls around behind. So he sort of is getting a running start while they have time to do this fake. And I just thought it was interesting. It's much more prominent in the second clip that I'll show here in just a moment. But on the second one, you're going to get both the center and the right tackle pulling. So we've got the center and the right tackle are both going to pull across, and the pass is going to end up thrown to the bottom of the screen. And I think it's John Ross. And you can watch him. There's a lot of angles to watch this play. John Ross runs a terrible route. This is a slant route. And just watch how long it takes him to set this up. It's incredibly slow. Like, you never have time to make that throw on an RPO because the ball has to come out fast. But then you look at the offensive line and you see, again, we're on the 23-yard line, 22-yard line, somewhere in there. Watch the offensive line at the snap of the ball. We've got the center and the right tackle moving backwards. They're gaining depth so then they can move up and block, and nobody else is moving forwards. And so when Pickett throws this ball, yeah, it's tremendously late. But the 1 yard line we can't go past is right here at the 22, and nobody's past it. And so I thought it was a tremendously slow RPO. And it was interesting. I've never seen that at the NFL level. I've seen like Wake Forest do it at the collegiate level. They're notorious for these slow mesh points. And there's some other teams that run they call them walk RPOs. I've never seen it at the NFL level. So I thought that was an interesting wrinkle. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's because the receivers cannot separate or because Kenny Pickett cannot execute RPOs. But I am envisioning a world where this could be lethal with Jalen Hurts. If you can stretch that mesh point that long with your starting offensive line and still have a threat for Hurts to pull it and keep it himself up the middle, like a midline read RPO, he can keep it. He can throw the slant to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I'm imagining a world where that would be nearly unstoppable. So it was interesting to watch. I'll be interested to see if they can execute that against a starting defensive line or if this was just totally a blip on the radar in preseason.
Yeah, it's almost a great analysis, isn't it? We don't really know if it's by design or just because Kenny Pickett doesn't look very good at anything throwing the football related at this point. I think going back to just very quickly, like Kellen Moore's offense, he ran a lot of RPOs when he was with the Cowboys as well. I didn't watch his Chargers offense as closely as I watched his years with the Cowboys and going back through sort of the articles I did. And he does love an RPO. So I think those people thinking like that's why one reason why I like the Kellen Moore hire was I think his offense should blend quite well with what the Eagles have already done under Sirianni for the past few years. And I think the RPOs would be something Hurts would be very, very comfortable with. They have got called for ineligible men down the field too often of late the past few years. If anything, it became annoying. And I think that the Eagles may have stopped running RPOs at times because of that, because that penalty is a killer. If you get called for that on 1st and 10, like you might as well just like taking a sack. Like it can be a drive killer. So I think that is something that I think we need to watch out for in the preseason. It's a good sign at the end of the day, isn't it? Alex chiming in again, watching Pickett feels like Russian roulette for outside. Yeah, it does indeed. It was a pretty boring game. I don't even think we're going to bother spending too long or if any time on the quarterback. Right, both our final points, Shane, are no surprise. They are about wide receiver free. Where do we start with this? I've gone John Ross and you've gone Johnny Wilson. What bad receiving performance in terms of catching the football do we want to start with? Ross or Wilson?
You go ahead and start us off with Ross.
All right, I'll start with John Ross. So I've read lots of great comments about John Ross in training camp, and I hope they're positive. And by the way, he played against the Patriots in training camp today as we're recording, and apparently he was good again. So I hope that this was just a blip. But he was not very good. And you showed that clip a second ago with a slant route that was bad. Now, full disclosure, I had lots of people in my mention, Shane, lots of people. But he's running against Nate Wiggins, and Nate Wiggins is incredibly fast, and that is true. But sometimes you just get a feel when you watch a player, like whether they're explosive or not. Like you can watch two explosive athletes next to each other, and they're both running the same speed. You know they're explosive. Like John Ross just didn't look explosive. And I think the problem with small guys that are very, very fast is that in training camp, I fear they're always going to look great because they're running like free releases, they're running one-on-one drills, and then they get into a game where there's contact with them, and they just can't do it. And I tweeted a couple of clips. Everyone's, I think, seen the one early on in the game when Kenny Pickett underthrew him by about 10 yards as well. There was a post route later on that I didn't clip up that John Ross ran. I don't know if this one was against Wiggins, but he just got nowhere. And the one that I did clip up was clip 7 on my film thread, where basically John Ross is isolated. I believe he's isolated, if I'm remembering the correct clip, as the single receiver in opposite trips, which is a very interesting use for John Ross. And I have a feeling he will not be the isolated receiver to trips very often, but he just can't play through contact. And when you see a fast guy, like, he doesn't look fast, Shane. And you can tell me how fast a cornerback is, and I get it. But anyone who's watched football for a long time knows when they see an explosive player, like, he just doesn't look like he's moving that quick. That 4.2 speed doesn't look there. And sadly, sort of all he's got is the whole reason why he didn't really make essentially a career in the NFL was if he doesn't win down the field vertically with speed, I'm not entirely sure what else he is actually going to win with. So I think wide receiver 3, we could probably have a much deeper chat than we won't right now, except for I know we're both on the same page. No pun intended. I got to stop saying that phrase. I know that we are worried about wide receiver 3. And I think it's easy for people to just say, well, you got Joe Brown and Devontae Smith. How many good players do you need? But it only takes one to go down, and all of a sudden you're left with like just one. And just in general, you mentioned this to me off air, but we've watched this team with bad wide receiver 3s for so long. Like, we're starved of just like, give us a half decent, consistent wide receiver 3. I still have hopes of Paris Campbell, who obviously has not been there. And Johnny Wilson definitely could play a role, but it was definitely a stock down performance for John Ross. I know you're going to talk about Johnny Wilson blocking as well. So I'll tell you what, I'll do the negative. I'll let you talk about the positive as well. Just quickly before you get to Johnny Wilson's blocking, I was a little bit disappointed with Johnny Wilson as a receiver as well. He ran one nice slant route in about the second quarter, I think, and Kenny Pickett overthrew him, which was annoying. I was tempted to tweet it out and say, could he catch it? But I didn't, because I thought I'd got lots of hate for the bad Pickett throw. But there's a part of me that wants a 6'7" guy to still bring it in. The one that I worried about... It
says a lot about you as a quarterback if you're overthrowing a 6'7" receiver on a slant route too, by the way.
It's not great, is it? And it was pretty high as well. You'd have to be about 7'2", I think, to deal with that one. The clip that I had for like bad Johnny Wilson, before you talk about good Johnny Wilson, was the first one in my film thread. I basically just think that the days of tall, long receivers who can't run down the field are gone. Like the contested catch merchants, the Kelvin Benjamins, the Devin Funches. I think if you play outside now, you have to be able to separate vertically. And I saw some people tweet me like, he's actually much quicker than this. I mean, he ran a 4.5. He's not slow, but he's not vertically quick. There is not one part of this rep. For those of you who aren't watching, he's basically running a comeback route, but he just doesn't sell the vertical at all. Like, the cornerback doesn't have to flip his hips. The cornerback doesn't really ever seem to break any sweat. Like, you can tell a lot by body language of corner, Shane, as you know. And that cornerback has no stress about getting beat vertically. Like, he is not panicking about it in the slightest. He is sitting on a comeback. And by the way, it's a single high safety. So if he wanted to run down the field, that's a 6'7" guy running down the field on you one-on-one. Back shoulder throws, etc., could be dangerous. He just doesn't look fast. Like, the cornerback does not seem worried at all. And I'm excited about Johnny Wilson in the slot for that exact reason. And what you're going to talk about is why I think he should be in the slot. I don't really want to see him outside. I know he's a 6'7" guy, but I'm not sure he has the juice to get on top of defenders. And I think if you play on the inside, you can sort of hide that a little bit more than you can simply one-on-one. However, I actually think Johnny Wilson did some really good things that I know your third point. So do you want to talk about maybe the underrated part of Johnny Wilson's game on whenever the Eagles played? Friday night? I don't even know what day they played. When did they play, Shane?
Friday, yeah.
On Friday. Do you want to talk about the good part of Johnny Wilson?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him get some more receiving opportunities. I didn't think there were a ton. But Johnny Wilson as a blocker was fun to watch. So I've got 2 clips. The first one is 3 wide receivers at the top of the screen. Johnny Wilson is the middle receiver. I'm not sure who's split out real wide. It's probably John Ross, and Britton Covey is closer to the line of scrimmage. And they just run a little bubble screen. And just, I mean, Johnny Wilson puts his guy on the ground. And anytime your receiver is pancaking guys, that's fun. And so just destroys him. And that's what's exciting for me. I mean, based off what we saw from wide receiver 3 in this game, I would rather just play Johnny Wilson and call it like 11.5 personnel, because surely Johnny Wilson can outrun a linebacker if it comes to it. and he can outblock a defensive back. So you can just sort of use him to generate mismatches. If you're going to be rubbish at wide receiver 3, at least put out the freakishly tall guy that can pancake people. So the other one, the Eagles are in a bunch wide here. The bunch is at the bottom of the screen, and it's Johnny Wilson is the far perimeter receiver. And again, it's going to be the little bubble screen to Britton Covey, and he's going to get out. And I think it's Nate Wiggins here. It's hard sometimes to tell from the screen, but it's Nate Wiggins, I believe, that he locks up and drives him like 12 yards downfield. Now, again, Nate Wiggins is 172 pounds, which is why John Ross, if you can't get off of press from a 172-pound defensive back, that's problematic. But just seeing him be able to block and drive guys out of plays, I thought that was a lot of fun. That's why he would be my wide receiver 3. If I had to pick from what's on the roster right now based off of the limited things I've seen, give me Johnny Wilson.
Yeah, and that's partly because we haven't seen any Paris Campbell as well.
True.
We just haven't really had a great deal about him. He's still he's my hope, Shane. He is my hope for the wide receiver 3. We won't talk too many like free agency targets. We did have a couple of questions in the Discord this week about wide receiver 3. So if you do want to know sort of more of our thoughts on players that we're interested in, I threw out a few names in the Discord, mainly veterans. I think I'm after rather than young, unproven guys. And also, if you go back to the previous episode, I did a little bit of a section on Johnny Wilson blocking, sort of how I think he could be used on sort of duo runs and stuff as well, which we didn't see any this week, to be fair. But in defense of that, we didn't really see anything run game wise of any interest because it was basically just zone read stuff. There was a couple of pistol, and I think they ran counter read once that got me a tiny bit excited. But except for that, it was a very, very vanilla offensive showing. I think that's it for offense, Shane. I think that's all I think I've got a lot more, or not a lot more, but I enjoyed watching the defense a lot more this week. Have you got any final thoughts on the offense before we throw it over?
No, that wraps it up on the offensive side of the ball for me. So we can transition to the defensive side of the ball, and we'll give you our 3 points each. Johnny, why don't you lead us off with your first point on defense?
Wicked. As I'm currently reading what I said I would talk about, let's talk about basically pass defense. I enjoyed this game a lot more than I did the offense because you could see Vic Fangio's defense. Like, that's what's always nice. You've studied the defense for a while, and you're watching the film, and you go, this is quite obviously like Vic Fangio's defense. You saw the quads or quarters or cover 4 match, whatever the hell you want to call his defense. You saw a bit of cover 6, you saw a bit of cover 8, like you saw the simulated pressures. Like, it was a lot more expansive, I thought. In the preseason preview, I spoke about wanting to see good communication from the secondary. There was one rep that I have tweeted out where I didn't see good communication, but there was only really one that stood out. It was where actually they were playing against a sort of dirty bunch look where they had like 2 wide receivers stacked and then the running back ran straight out into the flat. And that was the only time I really saw poor communication, but I did see quite a lot of good examples of good communication. I'm going to struggle to show you one that doesn't talk about Kelee Ringo because that's your first point, because he was the star of the show, and I'll let you pick the best one this week. So I'll show clip 2 of my film thread, Shane, and I'll show it for a couple of reasons, mainly because it has Quinion Mitchell doing good things, which who the hell doesn't want to see the Eagles' first round pick looking good? So one of the things that if you pause at the start, Shane, really quickly as well, for the listeners as well. I'm writing a lot about Fangio at the moment. So Fangio's on my brain a lot, probably way too much. I think there was one play in this game, Shane, that I watched about 25 times, and I still don't know what the call was, and it's driving me a little bit insane. But that is how things go when you're watching film. So quite often the Eagles deal with these sort of 3-by-1 sets. So the Ravens have got 3 receivers on one side. They play what's known as cover 6. And cover 6 is essentially quarter, half. And whenever we describe a Fangio coverage, we always start with a passing strength. So for those of you wondering, like, what's the difference between quarter, half and half, quarter, it's literally just the passing strength has the 2 quarters in cover 6. And basically, as I've always said, for anyone who wants to understand Fangio, just ignore everything technical and basically just look at the passing strength and watch how the cornerbacks or defensive backs and linebackers distribute the routes or the routes, of course, I'm sounding like an American, routes. Because basically that's all you need to look out for. So this is hard because this takes reps, like this takes practice. You have to know sort of like what other defenders are doing. You have to know what other combinations the receivers are running because there are different calls you have to make on the field. And Quinion Mitchell is also probably trying to learn the playbook from the nickel and outside. I like this rep because it's quite tough. Because if you play it now, Shane, and pause it in just a second, once you get into the route, the inside Ravens receiver or tight end runs vertical. And what that does is that drags away the sort of linebacker the strong side linebacker, he has to sort of follow the receiver downfield. Now, however he communicates that, whether Mitchell has any idea, whether there's a shout from the safety, whether he knows, but he basically now has to know that he can't pass off this inside receiver yet. So this is a pretty decent position for the Ravens receiver to be in, because he should have decent leverage here, because Mitchell was not necessarily in man coverage. He's just he's almost there to what we call match, carry, deliver, essentially match him and then deliver him to the inside linebackers. But in this case, the linebacker's been dragged out. So Mitchell ends up almost, as most of Fangio's defenses do, we call it zone coverage, but you end up in man coverage half the time anyway. So basically, this ends up as Mitchell's guy. And he does such a good job of undercutting the route. Once you play it on, he gets his hands on him, he gets inside, and the only disappointing thing is he doesn't intercept it, because it would have just been awesome to see him pick this off. Like, this is really nice. He does a really good job of getting hands on him without holding him. No one's going to call this PI. Yeah, he's physical enough. And I don't mind if Mitchell's going to play in the slot. I know some people have spoke about him, like, we need to see him outside. He's a first-round pick. Nickel cornerbacks are basically first-round picks now anyway. I would love it, like, long-term if he plays outside, of course, and I don't think he's going to end up in the slot full-time. But if this is his role for the start of this season, and this is how they want to use him, because they've got Slay on one side and either Ringo or Isaiah Rodgers on the other, like, I'm fine with it if this is how he's going to look. So I wanted to mention sort of the communication of the defense, the way that the defense played. I think pass coverage wise, they just look good. Like, they look like they had an understanding of what Fangio wanted them to do most of the time. And they did run a couple of cool blitzes as well, which I think you're going to look at for your second point. Speaking of pass defense, though, do you want to take it away with, in my opinion, the guy who stole the show? I think he was the most sort of noteworthy player to talk about, which is a defensive back we both really liked last year, which is always nice. Kelee Ringo. So take it away and talk about what Ringo did this week.
Yeah, I mean, Kelee Ringo, I had a first-round grade on Kelee Ringo in last year's draft, and I understand why he fell out of the first round. Kelee Ringo falling out of day 2 is absurd, and it never should have happened. And I thought he played really well. I've got 4 plays here, and I won't talk through all of them, just want to show you. But the first one, he's at the top of the screen here. And this is a quarter half, like Jonny just talked about. We're going to be quarters to the passing strength at the bottom of the screen, and it's half at the top, which is cover 2. And I think he does a good job of disrupting the receiver's route. It's going to be a vertical route. And then he lets him go, knowing that the safety has time to get over the top, and he comes back down on the running back in the flat. And he's not ultimately involved in this play, but I think he does a good job keeping zone eyes on the quarterback. It's the play you just mentioned where Quinyon Mitchell almost comes up with the interception, but I thought it was a really good rep by Ringo as well, just at the top of the screen, just to make contact, eyes on the quarterback, fall off. So I thought that was a really good play. I forgot to cut the back view out of these, so let me fast forward. On the second play here, you've got Ringo at the bottom of the screen, and he's got no help over the top. Like, when we roll the tape, you'll see he's got no help, and this is really good coverage. I believe this is the one he ultimately ends up giving up a completion. It was just an absurd back shoulder ball that the receiver lays out for and makes a catch, but, you know, a perfect throw beats perfect coverage, and this is near perfect coverage. He's disrupts the route, pushes it to the sideline, using the sideline for help. Sometimes you just tip your hat to the offense. But I thought that one was really good. And then he comes back later this same drive. You just have to bounce back. And he does. He's at the bottom of the screen. Motion by the Ravens is going to basically isolate Kelee Ringo on an island against a slant route in the red zone. And he plays it perfectly. I mean, he has to be aware for an outside breaking ball, for a corner route, a fade. And he sits on that, and then he makes contact and breaks to the inside. The broadcast showed a really good replay of this where the hand goes right between the receiver's arms and pulls one of them down as the ball gets there. It was really good coverage, I thought, by Ringo in the red zone. And then the last one, he's going to be on the bottom of the screen. And this time, it's quarter, half, except the cover 2 side is on the passing strength. And so that basically allows the Eagles to have the safety that's over Ringo Key, any sort of crosser. So again, he is essentially, for all intents and purposes, we can pontificate on quarter, half and the techniques, but essentially he is one-on-one with this receiver, locking him down, man everywhere he goes, has no help over the top. And again, it's just a really good Really good rep by him. Makes contact, funnels him to the sideline. He's right there. And, of course, Nakobe Dean comes down and breaks up this pass on the running back. But overall, I thought Kelee Ringo had a really strong showing. I noticed him in an immensely positive way. And if he continues to play that way, he should have every opportunity to win that CB2 job.
Yeah, he really did stand out. We both liked him last year. You always throw in you had a first round grade on him. I had sort of a late first, early second. I can't lie. I was like 1-2. I wish I'd gone my guts and given him a first. But yeah, I think people forget he was extremely talented coming out of college. And both of us have said multiple times we don't know how he fell. He just looked really good. Like that clip you showed earlier on in the red zone when he had to deal with the in-breaking route is something that he struggled with last year. Like he was much better sort of like with out routes, vertical routes, like shot plays, posts, etc. But he was anything in breaking. And you mentioned it a lot. We won't go too mad about Fangio stuff this week, but essentially Fangio's philosophy is very simple. When you have things like trips, why do teams run trips and bunches? It's because they try and create traffic. So man coverage against free receivers is really difficult because you can run like slant flat or you can run a variety of different routes, combinations that can make it really hard in man coverage. So whenever Fangio gets like free receivers to one side, the basic premise is we'll flood the hell out of that side. Free receivers are really hard to cover because they can run a variety of combinations. So we'll put essentially 5 men on that side of the field. The bad news of that, and teams know this about Fangio, by the way, and they will deliberately do this, is that it means that your other cornerback plays a lot of man coverage. It's actually something I only thought about today, as in literally just now, about whether Fangio will often play his best. If he's ever had a star cornerback, I don't think it will matter this year for the Eagles, but if he ever did have a superstar who could move both sides of the field, I wonder if at some point you stick him on your weak side all the time, because essentially that's the side that's always isolated. But Ringo was isolated a lot. He had another clip actually that you didn't show, where he broke the ball up down the field. And that was once again, it was a play where he was completely isolated with zero safety help. Like people think playing quarterback for Fangio is easy because you get a lot of help. You get a lot of help if you're on the trip side. If you're isolated backside, you don't get much help at all. Like if anything, you get more help from a single high safety, from a like Jim Schwartz style defense, because you at least know anything like deep and in like posts are going to be covered by that safety. Fangio, you're pretty much left alone. So if you're going to play outside, you better be good. And Kelee Ringo really, really did look good. It's one game. It's one preseason performance. So he's not going to win the job based off this. But I must admit, it felt like a massive step in the right direction for Ringo starting week one based on this week. I'll get into my second one now as well, Shane. So I wanted to talk about a player that we spoke about so much already in the offseason. And I just find him hard. Like, not hard as in bad, just I find him very difficult to come to any sort of conclusion on. And it's one preseason game. But this was such a Nolan Smith performance. First of all, Nolan Smith played a lot of snaps and played into the third quarter. And Josh Sweat didn't play any. Bryce Huff didn't play any. So it felt quite like weird that he played so much. Whether that's to do with confidence, just to get him mental reps. But there was a couple of things that stood out. Firstly, I think he didn't rush the quarterback well at all. Like, I don't think he rushed the quarterback well in any pass rushing reps that I saw in the first half. Like, I think he had a bit of a disaster rushing the quarterback. I didn't see anything that I wanted to see from him. But then he got sacked in the second half. So then obviously the box score, 1 sack. Fans, brilliant. Nolan Smith's great because he got his sack. And it was more of a Fangio pressure rather than Smith winning individually. But Smith still won, and he still showed some good acceleration and good burst. I won't talk too much about that play because I imagine everyone's seen it, and it's a bit boring, us breaking down the Nolan Smith sack that I'm pretty sure 99% of people saw. The one I want to break down is his sort of run defense twice, because there was 2 moments that I just think summed it up perfectly. So if you look at clip 9, and this is actually one play we spoke about a little bit off air. Like, in both these plays, Nolan Smith does his job. Nolan Smith is there to set the edge, and Nolan Smith sets the edge. But in the first one, he's being blocked by a tight end. And although he does set the edge, he then gets like pancaked pretty badly by the tight end. Like, he ends up being basically sent to the ground. And again, he does his job, so it's not to panic. It's just like seeing your starting edge defender get taken down to the ground by a tight end. It's just a little bit odd, and it makes you worry about his weight. So I'm watching this play and thinking, oh, that's not good. Nolan Smith's on the ground. Then 2 plays later, the Ravens run straight at him. He takes on an offensive tackle this time, not a tight end, so a more difficult matchup. He doesn't just set the edge. He then disengages, uses his sort of arms to get rid of the offensive tackle, and then makes a tackle on the ball carrier, which is basically like textbook edge defending. Like, you can't do it better than that. So it just sort of summed up Nolan Smith. It was quite what's the word? Symbolic, almost, of what I think of Nolan Smith. One snap, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure. And the next trip, I'm like, brilliant, he's back. And I think that's still, he might just be like that this year. Before you go on to your second point, just really quickly, I don't know how closely you watched him, because I watched him quite closely. What did you think of him in general, rushing the quarterback? If you ignore the sack, which is hard to do, because, by the way, people like Hassan Reddick didn't rush the quarterback well for 2 quarters and then got a sack, and that is very important as well. So I'm not downplaying the sack. But what did you think of him? I don't know how closely you watched him in the first half. Did you see anything different to what I saw, or were you quite sort of underwhelmed with him rushing the quarterback as well?
Yeah, I saw more from him as a run defender than a pass rusher. I thought he had generally pretty good run defense reps. My favorite play of his wasn't even the sack. It was, I think, the play after the sack when he was at the top of the screen and he ends up making a play on a screen pass away from him. So, I mean, he's got a high motor. I love watching him play. I still need to see some more pass rushing from him. I think he can hang as a run defender. It's got to be a pass rusher. You got to be able to develop that. And, like I've said before, I think his rookie season was wasted by ineptitude on the defensive side of the ball as far as coaching goes. And it's a shame. And my goal for him now is I just want to see a pass rush move this year. I want to see him throw a counter move in a game and get a sack. And if he does that, I'll feel good about where we're at heading into year 3, but I didn't see it in this game. I mean, his sack, he had like a little dip move, but he wasn't initially blocked to begin with. So the athleticism I know he has, I need to see a counter move, and then I'll feel really good about it.
I said exactly that in my draft for the Bleeding Green article. It isn't out now, so you have to take my word for it. I'm not stealing your word, Shane. I said I just want to see a counter move, like just set someone up inside and then, set someone up outside and then win inside. But anyway, I thought the other big takeaway I had, which I'm not going to do because you're going to do it, was basically Fangio's use of sort of simulated pressures and blitzes. And in particular, I'll link it to Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith did drop into coverage a few times. And those of you who do not want to see edge defenders drop into coverage, don't watch the film this year. Because I am convinced after one game of preseason, which is brilliant to throw takes out there, but I obviously watched a lot of Fangio last year in Miami as well. And I'm convinced you are going to see edge defenders drop more and more. So I'm a little bit surprised Josh Sweat's still here in that sense. He won't drop too much. But basically, what Fangio wants to do from a pressure point of view, it requires somebody dropping. Fangio wasn't as vanilla as Kelee Ringo was on this game. I think he did run a few more creative pressure looks. So, Shane, do you want to talk a little bit about your second point, which I believe, unless I'm making up words now, is going to be talking about Fangio blitzing?
Yeah. Are we going to pull or channel our inner Ben Solak and say that Nolan Smith throws an inside spin move and gets a sack and we have to buy a jersey? I remember Solak saying that to Kist about Derek Barnett, and then like 2 different times Barnett got a sack off a spin move, and he came up with reasons that didn't count. But we might have to have a bet on the show
because he wasn't very good. Although Barnett he's had a decent career overall. Yeah, we'll think about it. Tweet us, give us some ideas. We'll throw something out there. We're not Nolan Smith haters. I just want to see it. I want to see it. Anyway, talk about Fangio and his blitz looks.
Yeah, so you're going to see this a lot. There's 2 plays. You mentioned edges dropping into coverage. 14 different times in this game, an edge rusher dropped into coverage. And that's if you don't count Zach Bond as an edge rusher, which I did not. But he dropped into coverage 7 times, and he rushed like another 7 times. So, but on this one, this is just what you're going to see a lot this year. You've got Nakobe Dean is going to blitz through the A-gap, and Nolan Smith at the bottom of the screen is going to drop out into coverage. And the reason Fangio does this is to try and get an overload pressure while only sending 4. So on this particular one, you've got a defensive tackle lined up in the left A-gap, and then you've got an end on the left side, an end on the right side, and then Nolan Smith has walked out over the tight ends. And so what the Ravens are going to do here is they're going to slide the center to the 2 defensive lineman side. And then you have the right defensive end lined up over the right guard. I think actually technically that's the left defensive end. But number 97 here is lined up over this guard to occupy that. And that's going to give your running back a free run through the A-gap. So now, congratulations, you've forced a running back to stay into block while also only rushing 4. And that's exactly how it plays out here. And the running back destroys Nakobe Dean, but he actually gets back up and is able to make a hit on the quarterback. So you're going to see that a lot from Fangio this year. Here it is from the back view, and then I'll show one other example of it. But Nakobe Dean, good pass rusher. Zach Bond used to be an edge rusher. Devin White, good pass rusher. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., good pass rusher. This is what they're going to do with their linebackers. On this second one here, they're going to rush Trotter, which I believe is right here on the hash mark. They're going to rush Trotter, and then they're going to drop. I think this is Jalix Hunt, but I can't get a good shot here. And so, again, you're rushing 4, but you're trying to get an overload here and still drop 7 into coverage. And so there you go, untouched through the A-gap again, hits the running back, so you force the running back to stay in while still only rushing 4. And so, again, you're just going to see that a lot from the Eagles this year. Expect that. And I don't mind that. I know I whined a lot last year about dropping the edge rushers. This is doing it with a purpose. Like, this is the difference in having Fangio and having a Fangio disciple. The Fangio disciple last year was like, oh, I know sometimes we drop edge rushers, and did it with no purpose or plan. There's a plan for why you're doing it here. And so that is what you're going to see a lot. And I think you should expect that. And it really ties in well with my third point because it's a similar play that I want to break down. But I'll throw it back to you first. Do you have anything you want to add on the Fangio blitzes?
Yeah, I was going to say go straight to your third. Before you do, I remember last year the Eagles had 5-man fronts and Sam Reddick was lining up outside opposite a wide receiver and then he dropped into coverage. That's pointless edge dropping. There is nothing there. Lining up a 5-man front and dropping an edge doesn't really do a lot. The difference what the Eagles were doing in this game was they were lining up with 4-man fronts and then they were dropping an edge and they were rushing someone else from a different position. There was a few examples where they used sort of creeper pressure looks where I remember one example, I can't remember what one it was, but they would have sort of 2 or 3 guys to one side, so the line would be shifted to that side. And there was multiple times when they got 4 rushers and one of them either got unblocked or was blocked by the running back. And any time you can do that as a DC, you're winning. Just really quickly, Shane, because it's a bit of a niche point again, but I wanted to mention this one just because I think it's quite an interesting philosophical debate about dropping the rusher. If you look at clip, as I go through my thread, clip 4, this is one you didn't mention, so I'll just throw it very, very quickly. I'll do this very, very quickly and then get to your third point, which is the one where they rushed Quinion Mitchell. So what they did is they dropped the edge defender opposite Quinion Mitchell. Is it Patrick Johnson or is it somebody else at this point? Anyway, they dropped him. But I think one of the problems with Fangio, basically, and this is a thought I have at the moment about one of the problems with Fangio's defense, is you can't really do everything. If you just pause this for 2 seconds, Shane. And what I mean by that is, if you want an edge rusher to be the best pass rusher there is on the planet, the odds are he's probably not going to be great dropping into coverage. I think really Fangio's edge rushers, I think you can make an argument actually that he doesn't need great pass rushers outside, and that might be controversial, or maybe that's one reason why they like Nolan Smith as well, was actually he wants his pressure from interiors, and you care more about serviceable pass rushers. I'm not saying Bryce Huff and Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith are not good enough, but I mean, there's an argument that being able to drop and being an average pass rusher is more important than being elite. And I don't necessarily agree with that, by the way. I'm saying I wonder if Fangio sometimes thinks it. But I think this is a great look because basically on the whiteboard, you win. So the Eagles rush 4, but one of them is their cornerback, and the quarterback is completely unblocked, and it forces the quarterback to run out. So on whiteboard, this is check. Fangio wins every time. This is the dream scenario. But I think the interesting thing about this is the other problem with dropping edge defenders is sometimes they just aren't very good. And whoever the edge is here, he's sort of a little bit confused about who he's covering. He's in a bit of a weird position when he drops out. And basically the quarterback ends up running straight past him because he's also not fast enough to deal with the quarterback out in space. And I think it's a great look that schematically on the whiteboard you win. But sometimes football's not on the whiteboard. And one of the problems of dropping out edge defenders is sometimes they're not the best in this situation. And I think it's really hard to find edge defenders that are perfect for Fangio. I think this year, I really hope Bryce Huff might be the ideal guy. If he can just do enough dropping into coverage and just do enough in run defense early on, he might be as good as you're going to get. And to be honest, Nolan Smith is such a good fit for it as well. Such a good fit. I think Josh Sweat is more of the odd one out in terms of being unable to drop into coverage. But I wanted to show that play as well because it just shows, if people are wondering, everyone should drop edge into coverage every play. It's easy. Just drop an edge and rush a linebacker and you've figured out football. It's sometimes you can win on the whiteboard and not actually win in terms of the yardage. And that play was a good example. But yes, talk to me about your third clip, Shane, which ties in perfectly with what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is my favorite play in the entire game. It's a 3rd and 2. So the Ravens have the ball at like the 32.5-yard line. We'll say the first down marker, the 33.5-yard line. We'll say the first down marker is at the 35. The Eagles are going to only rush 3 on this, but the way they do it is fascinating because they're going to blitz Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and they're going to drop both edge rushers. It's Nolan Smith at the bottom of the screen. It's Jalix Hunt at the top of the screen. I don't know how I just hid you.
Wow.
We're doing this live.
There
we go.
For the people listening, he's kicked me out on the first episode of the film review. It's a good start.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things I love about this play. And so first of all, the Ravens changed the look pre-snap with motion. And so we see the motion happen, and you see Avonte Maddox is gesturing, he's communicating, and he's actually going to physically push Jeremiah Trotter over. So Maddox is setting things up there. I think that's really cool. And what the Ravens are basically going to run, they're going to run mesh sit wheel with a backside dig. And so it's a really common concept. We've got the backside receiver runs a deep dig route. You've got your mesh routes crossing over the middle with a sit route over the top of that, and the running back's going to come out with a wheel route. There's a lot of things you can watch in this play. First, let's just watch Jalix Hunt at the top of the screen. Now, Jalix Hunt's going to be a little slow out to the flat on the running back. So if this is a flat route, it's probably a first down. But he's able to recover and run step for step upfield with the running back. And so that's the first thing. That's cool that you've got an edge rusher. It helps he used to be a safety that can run with a running back on wheel routes. So that's cool. Another thing that's really cool is Tristan McCullum, safety here, and Nakobe Dean, who is, I think it's Dean right here. They pass off this mesh concept with each other. So rather than crossing each other, chasing their receivers, running the opposite direction, watch right here. They somehow communicate this, and they change out their receivers that they're covering. It's really good communication. It's a really cool scheme. And everything is covered up. There is nothing open. I have no idea what this coverage is. It looks like cover one man, except you have guys passing off routes and an extra hole defender. I could not tell you what this coverage is, but I can tell you everybody is covered. And then the best part is Josh Johnson tries to scramble, and Jeremiah Trotter, who blitzed from depth to begin with, disengages, and he makes this tackle and keeps it from being a first down. And so you can watch Trotter here from the background, gets hit by the right tackle, keeps him in the pocket, and then he's able to disengage and stop him for the first down. Like that's textbook. That's how you get off the field on a third down. I loved that play, everything about it, the execution. It wins on the whiteboard, it won on the field. That's the play that I watched like 22 times while I was watching the film, and I still couldn't tell you what that coverage is, but it was cool.
I won't make a comment about what coverage it is in case I get it wrong because I haven't watched it enough. Let's just call it drop 8. Like, I love dropping 8 guys as well. They did that once or twice actually in this game as well, which is something they maybe could do. I like the fact you highlighted Hunt as well. He's another guy. I mean, we said about how raw he is as a pass rusher, but that's why the Eagles drafted him. Like, I'm starting to come around to this idea that Fangio doesn't want elite pass rushers. He wants elite athletes who can drop and who can rush and who can play the run and do almost a little bit of everything. And then you get your pass rush from your blitzes, basically. You scheme up your pass rush rather than doing it individually. A little bit Bill Belichick style, I guess. He's never been known for having elite individual pass rushers. Right, I'm going to finish with my final point, Shane, because as in true on the Shane Page style, 45 minutes we said was the aim, and it's now coming up to 57. I will finish with backup linebacker. And I put this on the film thread. I'm going to repeat what I said. I said, whisper it quietly, Shane. But do the Eagles have some depth at linebacker? Now, it's possible they have 5 average players and no one actually any really good, but they may have depth. I'm going to pose a question, Shane, before I talk very briefly, and it's a very quick point, to be fair. I'm going to put you on the spot, as I like to do sometimes, because I hate being put on the spot myself, so I like doing it to other people. It's week 15. The Eagles are playing well. They've got a winning record. They're going to the playoffs, and everyone's healthy. They're playing a normal nickel front, so 5 defensive backs, 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. In order of depth chart, what is the Eagles linebacker depth chart by week 15?
Devin White is 1. 2 and 3 is tough, but I'll say Trotter 2, Dean 3, Bond 4.
I think I'm going to say the same. I think Zach Ball, and nothing against Zach Ball, but I just don't understand where this like Zach Ball starting hype has suddenly come from. Unless Kobe Dean can improve in coverage, like basically it's a chance for me to talk about Jeremiah Trotter. I loved him pre-draft.
Actually, I want to change my answer. I can't put Dean 3. I don't think Dean can be healthy by week 15. But
that's true. Shane, what if I told you that Ben Van Sumeren could be linebacker 3 for me? Like the sky's the limit.
He was solid. I really thought he was solid throughout the game.
He was solid last year. He was a UDFA, wasn't he? I believe he was a UDFA that I basically liked pre-draft. I seem to like everyone pre-draft. I promise I don't. The Eagles have just drafted quite well of late. Like I did not like Jalen Hunt pre-draft for a 3rd rounder. I didn't like Will Shipley as a 4th rounder massively. So I don't love every Eagles pick. I'm not a homer here. I try and be partial. Partial? That's not what I mean, is it? What's
impartial.
The word I mean? Impartial. Yeah. Oh, that's not a dodgy English translation. That's just me being thick. I try and be impartial. And oh God, where was I? I liked Ben Van Sumeren last year when I watched him. I liked him pre-draft. He's extremely athletic, Shane. Extremely athletic. In fact, why not end with one film clip, Shane? Why not? Go to the last film clip I tweeted out, and I didn't actually record it very well, and I cut off the beginning, so it's a bit annoying. But basically, this is your classic like sideline to sideline. Like think Luke Kuechly in his prime, flying sideline to sideline. Like when I think of linebacker play, that is what I think of. Like he's just athletic. Like compare that to watching Shaq Leonard last year running around. I mean, it's just I've got to stop comparing everyone to Shaq Leonard because it's mean at this point. But that's just like what you want to see from your linebacker. And Jeremiah Trotter, Shane, looked like Jeremiah Trotter. Like I don't know what people want to say. He shouldn't have gone in the 5th round. He was much better than that. Yes, he's undersized. He knows how to play linebacker. Like he just looked pretty good out there. Like, is it possible that the Eagles have some decent linebacker depth for once? I wasn't particularly impressed with Devin White or Zach Ball on the early rundowns, by the way, and I'm a little bit terrified about Devin White still in general, if I'm being fully honest. In coverage, I'm not, and I think he'll be the linebacker 1 this year, and he'll start this year. And I hope that works out well, and at least he's athletic. But I really do think, Shane, there is a chance for either Trotter or even Ben Van Sumeren to play a role this year. Like I think as the year goes on, Trotter's going to make that position his because he just looks like he did in college. Like he was quick to diagnose. He was good in run defense. Like I'm not really sure why he fell, but I'm not sure Zach Baldwin's going to be the guy that's going to block their pathway to playing this year. So I'll just end on that on a slightly positive note. Is it possible that the Eagles may have some depth this year at linebacker? It is also very possible, Shane, they are very bad at linebacker and they don't have anyone who's a good enough starting linebacker. That is also an alternative world that we may live in. But I think this might be the year that the Eagles actually have some pieces at linebacker, which after last year, when they were literally rolling out anyone, I will take seeing the Kobe Dean as your linebacker 3, as Ben Van Sumeren as your linebacker 4. Like, I really think they have some talent there. And I also think it fits Fangio's defense well if they're going to blitz the linebacker a little bit this year. I think go nuts. Like, go nuts. You've got Devin White, Jeremiah Trotter, and the Kobe Dean. All 3 of them can blitz. Zach Baldwin previously played edge. You've got so many linebackers that can blitz. Like, why the hell not? So, yeah, I think that's what I've got this week on the defensive side. But I'll finish with the fact that the Eagles may have some linebacker depth.
For my own nefarious purposes, can I get you to state one more time clearly into the microphone that you do, in fact, think Ben Van Sumeren is prime Luke Kuechly?
Absolutely not. After being done multiple times, I think I made a very clear point of not saying it then. I think I managed to time it perfectly. But I'm sure you'll still be able to throw out a clip and say that it was a comparison. Anyone who's watched film and knows what linebackers flowing sideline to sideline look like, they know what I mean. Maybe I should just stop mentioning people in their prime full stop on the podcast to give you zero tools to play with for your own enjoyment. And I think you're just bragging now by using fancy words, seeing as I've just got the word impartial wrong, just to end the podcast to sound even more intelligent, Shane. So thank you as well for that one.
I do always enjoy throwing up a Jonny out of context clip. It's elite marketing. I appreciate you putting that out there for us. But speaking of marketing, before we get out of here, I do just want to pop up on the screen. I posted this out from the Eagles Pin Pull Network Twitter account, which if you're not following, go follow at Eagles Pin Pull, our network schedule for podcasts. So whether you are a film nerd like Jonny and I, a total football noob, anything in between, we've got 6 shows a week that are going to be coming to you guys on the network. Now, obviously, it depends on when the actual game is, but on a normal week, we will have live post-game show on Sunday right after the game. This week, it'll be on Thursday. Monday, you'll get Chalk Talk with Mark and I, where we break down the Cowboys, the Commanders, the Giants, and other top games across the league. On Tuesday, you will get Birds of the Roundtable, which is a roundtable show with a few other guys, recapping top takeaways, looking ahead to the next game. You'll get our film show typically on Wednesdays, the Armchair Scouts on Thursdays to preview the college football action and get a jump start on potential Eagles prospects you can watch. And then John Stolnis will be hosting Eye on the Enemy on Saturdays to give you that in-depth preview to get you ready for the game. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the Eagles Pinpool Network, wherever you get your podcasts. 5-star ratings and reviews are greatly appreciated. It helps us get the show out there, and we're very excited to cover this season for you guys and have a lot of fun, hopefully on our way to a Super Bowl victory. So that's about all I've got for today. Jonny, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, just the usual. I feel bad for telling people to say it every time, but if you like the show, it's first year doing it, but we've been doing this for a lot longer than 1 year. And I know you in particular do a lot of work behind the scenes, and both of us do a lot of work watching films. So please, please, please share, download, 5-star reviews. You know the usual stuff. Every podcast says it. And if you do want to get a little bit deeper and want to talk to us and support the show, please support the show on Patreon as well. But support the whole network as well. I've been listening to the other podcasts myself, of course. John Stolnis just finished doing the 2004 season, and if you're like me and did not watch the Eagles in 2004, possibly because of age, or if you're from the UK, as I know some of our listeners are, and literally did not watch a single bit of the sport in 2004, then I really enjoyed listening to that because I've watched all the DVDs and stuff, but going back week by week through the season, I obviously had no idea how the season played out. So yeah, if you haven't listened to that, that's something you can go back and listen to whenever. But it's good to talk football, Shane, and good to have real actual football to break down. 2 more weeks of preseason. We will get through it. We will find some takes, and then we'll get into the real thing. Final shout out to Daniel Lee as well, who just commented on YouTube saying always appreciated. And yeah, if you do watch live, please feel free to chime in with any comments and questions you've got, especially as we're breaking down film. We will try our best to answer. But yeah, I'll leave it to you to finish formally.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining in. We will catch you guys next week. And again, it'll be a little later from the game because the game's on Thursday night. Normally, there won't be as much time passing, but we'll be back next week to break down the film from the Eagles-Patriots game. If you guys have suggestions for the show, things that could make it a little easier for you to follow, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know. And otherwise, we will see you next time on another episode of On the Shane Page.